Are you Christina?
On a recent Sunday afternoon in Orlando, Florida, Rich Tosh was knocking on doors.
My name is Rich. I'm a volunteer with the Florida Democrats.
And on that same Sunday afternoon in Orlando, Donald Trump's campaign office was closed, with no sign of activity inside. It's a telling sign of the two campaigns' differing strategies in the must-win state of Florida. Democrats still put a lot of faith in the get-out-the-vote efforts. They have 72 field offices statewide and have reached 90,000 people to volunteer.
Because when people actually get into the mindset of coming up with a plan, it makes them more likely to execute it.
The Republican side says it has 65 field offices and thousands of volunteers and staffers.
I've been coming into the office, volunteering an hour here, an hour there. Makes me feel a little bit better because I know I'm doing something.
Although it's unclear how many of those are focused on Trump's campaign, which has been relying primarily on the RNC's efforts in Florida. But that strategy may be backfiring. The RNC has directed funds away from Trump's ground game efforts, and some offices like this one in Miami are focused much more on down-ballot candidates like incumbent Senator Marco Rubio. Other offices seem informal at best. One of the locations Trump's campaign had listed as an office was actually this Dunkin' Donuts. The staff says sometimes supporters meet there. The Trump campaign hasn't returned multiple requests for comment. Republicans also have some door canvassing, but some in the party seem open to the idea that ground games matter less than free publicity and the popular rallies that Trump is holding.
All right. Well done. Winner.
4 of the past 6 presidential elections in Florida were decided by 3 points or less. President Obama won Florida by less than 1 percentage point in 2012. It could be that close again in 2016, where polls are bouncing back and forth.
Ground game definitely matters. It may be only at the margins, but Florida elections are at the margins. You know, whether or not a good GOTV is only going to bring out 2 or 3 percentage points more of your targeted audience, well, that's probably enough to sway an election in Florida.
The goal of a good ground game is to sway undecided voters and increase turnout. It starts with getting people registered to vote and then trying to make sure they get to the polls. It's also about making sure people know where they can vote early, or that they can send in an absentee ballot.
You know, you can vote early. You don't have to go stand in line on election day if you go to a library.
More than half of voters are expected to vote before November 8th.
Have you received your absentee ballot, or are you going to vote in person?
Experts say this is where ground games can sway a close election.
You need to have what we call absentee ballot chasers on the grounds, knocking on doors, making phone calls, finding out why that individual hasn't returned that absentee ballot, who's a registered Republican and has voted in the past. That takes shoe leather being expended, it takes people being willing to make phone calls, and the Republican Party's operations don't seem up to snuff of what they were 4, 8, or 12 years ago even.
There are some signs the Democrats' ground game advantage is reflecting in the numbers. Democrats submitted more voter registration forms than Republicans, and their numbers are competitive when it comes to mail-in ballots, which is an area that Republicans typically dominate. But the final test to see if all the door knocking still matters will come on November 8th.
I registered a voter the other day, and I thought, that's a vote for Hillary. That one vote's not going to make all that much difference. But you multiply that by the thousands of volunteers all across this state, and those 1,000 votes will make a difference.